Hello, good morning viewers. Today we are here to share some of our views entitled An Overview of Downstream Processing. I am Sneha Pandya from MG Science Institute, Ahmedabad, and with me Bhairavi Bain is here from RG Shah Science College, Ahmedabad. We will try our best to provide you with the information about the downstream processing in the lucid and simplified manner so that you can have the clear concept about what is downstream processing, what is its importance and how it is carried out. Now to start with, may I have the first slide please? Industrial processes we are talking about. You know that industrial processes are conducted in order to get varieties of the bioproducts using microorganisms. You know that there is a wide range of bioproducts obtained using the commercial processes. The list is very big. It starts from the biomass, organic acids, amino acids, vitamins, antibiotics, and the latest varieties of the products we consider them as the recombinant products where we get insulin, interferon, recombinant vaccines, therapeutic proteins and many more. Now, before we go to the title, let us make it very clear what we understand by the term fermentation. Term fermentation, as it is known, well known that it is one of the energy generating processes. But the term means differently to the different people in the different disciplines. For a biochemist, from the strict biochemical point of view, if we consider the term fermentation, then it is the energy generating process in which both the electron donors and the electron acceptors are the organic compounds. So organic compounds are there as the substrates, that is the donor, as well as the organic compounds are playing the role of the final electron acceptor and the energy is produced. But the meaning is not the same for a microbiologist. From the microbiological point of view, the term fermentation is used in its broader sense. That means it is any process which makes use of the microorganisms to get the industrially important product. Or we can also consider the term fermentation from the microbiological point of view as the process where the bioconversion is there of the organic carbon substrate into economically important bioproducts. So now it is very clear that in which sense we consider the term fermentation. It may be any process, aerobic or anaerobic, where it exploits the microorganisms to get the industrially important product. Now, as you know that fermentation is not an instant process. It is a multi-stage process. There are many component parts of the fermentation process, and as we study them under the two broad titles as the USP and the DSP, means the upstream processing and the downstream processing. Upstream processing, it covers all the components leading to and including the process of the fermentation where the various components are included. It starts with the isolation of industrial organisms. Once the organisms are isolated, they are improved to get better productivity. Then the media formulation is there. Once the media are formulated, then the sterilization of the media is there, and then the inoculum development program is there, which is carried out in order to have the healthy, active and pure inoculum in sufficient quantity to initiate an industrial process. Once all these things are ready, the mass cultivation of the microorganisms, that is the industrial organisms, is carried out in the controlled environment using the conditions which will support the optimum growth of the process organism. Now, when the organisms grow, during the growth and metabolic activities of these organisms, the product of interest would be produced by the organisms, and when this comes to end, it is the end of the upstream process, where it ends with the mass cultivation of the organisms in the controlled environment in the fermenter, which is the scientifically designed, purposefully built vessel, which will be providing all the required conditions for the optimum growth of the organisms. And then comes the second stage, which is the DSP or the downstream processing, where It deals with the recovery, separation, recovery and purification of the product, target product or the product of interest which has been synthesized in the fermenter. So, the fermentation multi-stage process, the two broad stages are the upstream and the downstream, and today we are here to give an overview of the downstream processings. What are the components, what are the methods, what are the equipments, how the product is separated, recovered and obtained in its purified form, which is then marketed. Next slide shows the DSP. What is it? That is the, as I told, it is the separation, recovery and purification of the product from the completed fermentation broth. And here it is very important to note that it also takes care of the effluent treatment. DSP is not confined to the separation, purification of the product, but at the same time equally important is to dispose of the waste that has been generated during the process safely. Standard methodologies and protocols are available for the safe disposal of the effluent so that it will not be adding any problem to the environment and to the society. So that aspect will also be considered over here, and that shall be taken care by Bhairavi-ben. I am giving you information about the actual DSP. Now, as you can see in this slide, that is what is the importance of the DSP. Now, when we consider the fermentation process, while developing any new fermentation process, it is very important to consider the entire process, the whole process. One cannot think of first the development of the upstream process and then the downstream process. As it has been mentioned over here in the slide that these are the integral stages of the fermentation program and they are interdependent on each other. Neither of them can be developed independently or alone. So while developing or while thinking of the USP, one has to keep in mind the downstream processing also. Say for example, I will give you one example where if we are having some carbon substrate which is used for the individual industrial fermentation process, the carbon substrate is available cheaply, but this substrate is having large amount of the impurities. So initially it will look attractive to use this carbon substrate because it is available at low cost. But at the same time, the impurities which are present in the carbon substrate may influence its DSP. So while using this cheaply available carbon substrate with high amount of impurities, finally it may prove expensive because it will make the DSP of the product complicated as well as expensive because the extra efforts will be required in order to remove the impurities. So here, instead of using the cheap carbon substrate, if we use the carbon substrate which is initially comparatively expensive but with low level of impurities, then it will be really cost effective. So this example makes it very clear that how the two stages or the two parts, that is the USP and DSP, are interdependent on each other and neither of them can be developed alone. Now, if there is a mismatch between the two parts, that is upstream and downstream, in that case it will make the process complicated and expensive, and the final cost of the product would then go beyond the expectation. And sometimes there are examples where it has been studied that the DSP, it contributes much or major part of the final manufacturing cost, and in many cases it has affected the viability of the entire fermentation project. So it is very important to keep this in mind that these two are the integral as well as interdependent. Neither of them can be developed alone, and while developing the fermentation process, one has to keep in mind both the USP and the DSP simultaneously. Both of them, they go together. Next one is the general problems. Now when we come to this stage of the DSP, then it is not simple and straightforward to separate, to extract, to remove the product, to recover the product and to purify it. Because when the fermentation ends, if the fermented broth is examined at that stage, then it is a heterogeneous environment where the target product or the product of interest which is present there, it is there in relatively small amount. And this product in small amount is accompanied by many other types of the unwanted materials, which includes the intact microbial cells, the cellular fragments, the unused metabolites, and many other metabolic products. So it becomes very difficult to separate the target product from these heterogeneous environment. At the same time, it has been studied that the microbial products, they are highly sensitive to the surrounding set of conditions. Many of these products, they are labile in nature. Many of them, they get degraded by the presence of the contaminating microorganisms. And so, it becomes very difficult to maintain the stability of the products. For example, those products which are having the bioactivity. The products, they maintain their bioactivity only within the defined set of conditions. Say, for example, penicillin. When we are considering the recovery of the penicillin, it has been claimed that penicillin G has got the half-life of only 15 minutes at 20 degrees centigrade. So, if the antibiotic is allowed to be there in the broth at about 20 degrees centigrade, then within 15 minutes, the half of the bioactivity would be lost. So, this has to be considered. And so, as it has been mentioned in the slide, that in order to maintain both the quality and the activity of the products, in this operation, the speed is very important. So, efficiency of the DSP is hugely dependent on the speed of operation. So, here the entire DSP is designed in such a manner so that it will yield, that is, it will result into the maximum yield of the product with the minimum cost. And to get this, not only the designing of the DSP, but here at the same time, it is also, the speed of operation is also influenced by selecting the correct type and correct size of the equipment. So, if you have got correct type of the equipment, at the same time correct size of the equipment, then it would be possible to process the fermented broth within the satisfactory time limit. You have already seen the laboratory centrifuge that we use, which is having very limited capacity. That is, only few ml of the liquid can be accommodated, whereas if we consider the industrial centrifuges, then they can accommodate thousands of the liters of the broth or the liquid at a time. So, correct type as well as correct size of the equipment is very important. Now, let us see the designing of the DSP, how the DSP can be designed. Now, the first requirement is, while designing the DSP, one has to keep in mind that the number of steps in the DSP should be kept to minimum. A multi-step DSP designing is not desirable because the additional steps, as the steps are added, it will add to the cost, it will make the recovery expensive, as well as, even though enough care is taken, there would be some loss of the product at every individual step or the stage. And so, while designing the DSP, one has to see that the number of steps are minimum. So, should be restricted to minimum possible steps. And while designing DSP, one has to consider several factors which will affect the recovery of the product. Now, there are different factors. Among them, the first and the basic one is the location of the product, where the product is present, whether it is the extracellular product, that is the produced by the organisms and then secreted out into the fermentation medium, or whether it is intracellular product where the product is there within the cells, or in some cases the microbial cells themselves are the products. So, depending upon the nature of the product, depending upon the location of the product, the designing of the DSP has to be done. The next factor is the concentration of the product. What is the amount of the product present? Depending upon that, you have to design. Intended use of the product. This is very important. That is, the target product or the product of interest, what is the use, intended use of the product. If the product is to be used in the food industry or in the pharmaceutical industry or for some medicinal purpose, then one has to take care that it should be free from any type of the pathogenic organisms or any type of the material. Say, for example, in case of the pharmaceutical products, it is desirable that it should be free from the pyrogens. In case of the product which finds application in food industry, should be free from any toxic material. So, intended use of the product is to be considered. Next one is the minimal acceptable standard of purity. All the bioproducts which are marketed, it is not mandatory that they should always be there in their highly purified preparations. It depends upon the use, once again, for which purpose it is going to be used. Say for example, vitamin B12. When it is simply to be used as the animal feed supplement, then the crude preparation, crude form of the vitamin B12 is enough, or it is satisfactory. But if the same product, vitamin B12, is to be used for the treatment of the pernicious anemia, then naturally the highly purified preparations of this is required. Now, when we consider this factor, then once again the cost will be influenced by the level of the purity required. So, this minimal acceptable standard of purity is also very important to be considered. The next factor is the magnitude of biohazards. There are many products, especially this factor is important in case of the recombinant products, which makes use of the recombinant organisms, because many of these recombinant organisms, they have been claimed for causing the biohazards, so this has to be considered. Then the marketable size and price of the product. So there must be proper balance between the expenditure made after the DSP, that is after the recovery and purification of the product, and the profit that would be there when the product is marketed. Size means it is in reference with the demand of the product, how long and in how much quantity the product would be required in the market. So that will also decide the life of the product in the market. So this is also to be considered. Economic reasoning. This is very important, because downstream processing, while designing it, one has to consider the available set of conditions at the plant or at the project, then the types of the equipments which are available, and the type of expertise which is available. It has, in an ideal DSP designing, it is desired that the use of already existing instruments would be satisfactory, instead of using the new and more efficient instruments or the equipments, because they will be very expensive, and secondly high level of expertise will be required. So the economic reasoning is very important, and one should make use of the equipments which are normally available, easily available, which are their operation, which are smoothly or easily operated, and they are having the low maintenance cost. So operational and maintenance cost should also be considered. It makes the economic reasoning, and considering these economic constraints, one has to design the DSP. Finally, the wide range in the recovery cost. When we consider these aspects, that is the contribution made to the final cost or the overall manufacturing cost of the product, then a significant factor is there due to the DSP. The range is very wide. The range is there from, say, about 20% to 80%. So if in some cases, depending upon the nature of the product, it may be as low as 20% or even 10% in case of the microbial biomass or in case of organic acids. But these cost goes on increasing. Cost due to DSP goes on increasing with the newer and newer products, and it may go as high as 80% in case of the recombinant product. So this also has to be considered. Now let us consider how the DSP is actually operated. There are two major operational modes. As it has been mentioned, it may be the ex situ DSP or it may be the in situ DSP. In case of ex situ DSP, it is the outside the fermenter, where the completed fermentation broth is removed from the fermenter, from the vessel, and then it is processed. And once again here, depending upon the location, either the liquid portion is processed or the cells are processed. Whereas the in situ DSP, it deals with the processing of the broth within the vessel. That is, without initially removing the broth from the fermenter, the broth is processed, that is, the product is separated, recovered and purified within the fermenter, and this approach is also called the whole broth processing. As we study in our syllabus, we mainly consider the ex situ DSP, where the fermentation broth is removed and then it is processed. But at the same time, we should be knowing that there is another approach where the processing of the broth is carried out within the fermenter, within the vessel, where here the broth is not removed. The approach is relatively simple, it is cost effective, and it is time saving approach. here this has been, of course it has not been successful in general, but it has been used successfully for the recovery of many antibiotics, where one example is that where it has been successfully used for the recovery of streptomycin, where the broth is, when the production phase is there, when the fermentation is going on, the antibiotic is removed, that is after the removal of the mycelia and the other large suspended solids. For that, the separation units are built in within the fermenter, which will remove the mycelial organisms, mycelial growth, as well as the other large suspended solids, and the antibiotic is recovered on the columns, ion exchange columns. And because in order to avoid this blockage of the columns, the initial removal of the mycelia is done. And in addition to antibiotic, it has also been successfully used for the recovery of many other organic compounds also. So, two operations, ex situ and in situ. We are going to talk about the DSP in case of the ex situ mode, how the processing of the broth is carried out once it is removed from the fermenter. So, DSP, when we consider, it starts with the nature of the product, basically extra or intracellular product. If we just look at the location of the product, it has been observed that the recovery of the extracellular product is comparatively or relatively smoother, simpler and convenient than the intracellular, because the extracellular products are produced and then they are secreted out into the medium. So, the product is already there in the medium, and only after the separation of the solid and liquid phase, the product is already there in the liquid, it is then further processed. Whereas in case of intracellular products, some extra efforts will be required, extra steps will be required in order to release the product from the cells. That is, the disruption of the cells would be required, which will result into the release of the product. And once the product comes out, then all the further steps, the following steps, they will remain common for both the extra as well as intracellular products. So, the next slide shows how the processing starts, that is how the downstream processing starts. The first title is the broth conditioning. Now, as we know that the first step in almost all the fermentation processes when the DSP is carried out is the separation of the two phases, the solid phase and the liquid phase. Now, we know different methods are available where they can result into the separation of these two phases, but before this is actually practiced, these are coupled or these are associated with some techniques. Some techniques are used in association with the common techniques for the separation of the solid and liquid phase. We know the most common methods are the filtration and centrifugation, but before these are carried out, some other techniques are also here associated, and these techniques, application of these techniques will make the further recovery of the product from the fermented broth smoother, convenient and quick. And these application of these different techniques we study under the title broth conditioning. So, the broth is conditioned or the broth is prepared for the convenient extraction of the product with an objective to separate solid and liquid phase. So, the objective is the separation of the two phases, solid and the liquid phase, but to make it smoother and simpler, some other techniques, some other procedures are also carried out, which will make the separation very smooth, easy, quick and convenient. So, for that, among them the first one is sedimentation. As we know, understand it very well, that sedimentation is the separation of the solid and liquid phase where the solids, they sediment, they settle down. Of course, there are different factors which affect the process of sedimentation. It is very slow process, and here it may be applied directly only for the sedimentation of those particles which are having the size more than 100 micrometer. Otherwise, to settle down extremely small size cells like bacteria, it will take too long. So, sedimentation is affected by both size and the density of the particles, and it may occur naturally, and primarily it was actually applied for the separation of the yeast cells from the alcohol and the alcoholic beverages. But the rate of the sedimentation may be influenced by the addition of the varieties of the agents, flocculating agents, and then it will result into the faster rate of sedimentation. Next one is the foam separation, or it is also studied under the title of flotation, where this technique it makes use of the differences in surface properties of the suspended particles present in the fermented broth. The suspended particles may be the microbial cells, the microbial proteins and the other colloidal materials, and here the surface properties, the differences in the surface properties of these particles are exploited, and they are selectively adsorbed onto the surface of the incoming or arising gas bubbles from the liquid. That is, the broth is transferred to a unit where the air is introduced, the gas bubbles would be produced, and on the surface of these gas bubbles the materials would be selectively adsorbed, resulting into the foam formation. This foam is then collected, it is collapsed, and then from the collapsed foam the suspended particles may be obtained or may be collected. So that is foam separation. Precipitation is also one of the common methods used for conditioning of the broth. Precipitation is carried out at various stages during DSP. See, this is to be very clear that whenever we make reference of any of these techniques, it does not mean that it is used at this particular stage only. Precipitation may be carried out during the early stages of the DSP, or it may be required during the later stages also. Precipitation is resulting into the formation of the insoluble precipitates. Insoluble precipitates would be there to remove the product in many cases, and in many cases the precipitation is carried out in order to form precipitates to remove the impurities. So it is carried out at different stages of the DSP process, and it is the most important advantage of precipitation is it results into the enrichment of the product in one step, that is in the single step, and at the same time it also reduces the volume of the broth to be processed further. And that is why precipitation is very important, because it not only enriches the product, but it also results into the decrease in the volume of the broth to be processed further. Same is true for filtration, which is also carried out at all scales of the DSP. Initially, the filtration, when it is carried out for the removal of the solids and the liquids, the depth filters are used, which are made up of either cloth or the cellulose, mineral slag wool, etc. And these filters, they are especially used for the removal of the mycelia, fungal mycelia, whereas for the removal of the yeast cells and the bacterial cells, the other types of the filters which are used or which find intermittent applications are satisfactory. And the filtration is also affected by many factors. Here also the one has to design the filtration process so that it will result into an economic separation of the solids and the liquid. Then the other most common method is centrifugation. That is, here in addition to the gravitational force, the centrifugal force is also applied, which will result into the sedimentation of the suspended particles, including the microbial cells. We know that the microbial cells are extremely small in size, so their separation, their sedimentation is also very difficult, but it may be favored by the processes of the flocculation or the sedimentation, which are usually carried out prior to centrifugation, and then the centrifugation is carried out. It not only separates the solid and the liquid fraction, but the centrifugation is also used in the separation of the two liquids with the different density, as we will consider later on that during the liquid extraction. That is, once again in the example of the recovery of the penicillin, we know that the organic solvents are used, the product is enriched in the organic solvent, and then the two phases are separated, or the organic phase and the aqueous phase, and then the product which is there in the organic phase is then further processed. So centrifugation is also one of the common methods for the separation. Then once the two phases are separated, that is the solid phase and the liquid phase, now if the product is extracellular, it will be very conveniently processed, that is the liquid phase is processed further. The initial separation will be followed by the concentration, then the formulation, etc. Whereas the solid fraction, if it is the of interest, that is if the product is there in the cells, then the another operation, important operation which is required is cell disruption. Now cell disruption, as it means the destroying the cells, disrupting the cells, which will result into the release of the cellular content along with the product of interest. But this is also not very easy and simple, because there are some requirements, basic requirements, prerequisite for the cell disruption, because we know that the microbial cells are surrounded by an extremely tough cell wall. So it is very difficult to break open the cell wall and to release the cellular contents. While using any method for disruption of the cell, one has to take care that there would be minimum contamination of the product. Product should be obtained with minimum contamination. Product should not be hydrolyzed by the other enzymes which are present into the cell. The major difficulty, the major problem that has been encountered, that has been faced with the cell disruption is, along with the cellular content, the nucleic acids are also released, and the release of the DNA and RNA, it adds to the viscosity of the broth. Viscosity is highly increased, and then the processing of the broth, once again, it becomes more complicated. So many methods have been described in literature, but very few are actually, very few of them find the industrial application. Many of them, their use is restricted at laboratory level. Different methods are there for cell disruption, and these methods are studied under two different titles, that is the mechanical methods and non-mechanical methods. As you can see, they have been listed in the slide. Mechanical methods, it includes solid shear, liquid shear, agitation with abrasives. Now all these methods, say for example solid shear, it makes use of the combined principle of the liquid shear as well as the formation of the ice crystals, where here solid shear, the microbial suspension is frozen at -20 to -30 degrees centigrade, and then it is passed through the homogenizers, where it faces the sudden pressure drop, which results into the formation of the cavitations, and the shock waves produced, they finally lead to the disruption of the cells. Principle of liquid shear, it makes use of the equipments which are known as homogenizers, which work at the high pressure. So here also the microbial slurry is introduced into the unit, where it faces very high pressure, and then it is suddenly released through a narrow orifice, where it faces a sudden pressure drop. The magnitude of the pressure drop is influencing the disruption. By using the selective pressure drop, one can have the complete disruption of the cells, or the cells may be disrupted partially. This method is especially used for the extraction of the enzymes as such. Whatever methods have been described, they are used for the extraction and recovery of the intracellular enzymes. Now with liquid shear, the main problem is with the generation of the heat. The temperature goes very high and it may inactivate the enzymes. So in order to overcome this problem, or in order to reduce the heat generation, initially the cell suspension is kept, or the temperature of the cell suspension is brought down. It is cooled to say about 4 to 5 degrees, and then the cell disruption is carried out. So solid shear, liquid shear. Then one more mechanical method is agitation with abrasives, where the mechanical disintegrators are used, and in these mechanical disintegrators, in this unit, a series of the rotating discs are there, which are mounted on either vertically or obliquely on the rotating shaft, and these discs, they are having the presence of the beads, which are actually the agency which will disrupt the cells. These beads, they are made up of the mechanically resistant material. It may be like glass or the titanium, so ceramic, etc. And here also the heat generation is the problem, and it may be reduced by providing the jacket to the disintegrator, where the cold water may be circulated in order to control the temperature. Then one more method is the ultrasonication, where the high frequency vibrations are used at the tip of the ultrasonication probes. Probes are used, but they find little application because of the very high cost, because of the large requirement of power input, and because of their short working life. They don't find the general application, but they can also be used in some sophisticated processes. And then comes, that is, these are the mechanical methods. The non-mechanical methods are the methods where the detergents are used, like sodium dodecyl sulfate, or it may be Triton X100, which is used in order to, they destroy the lipoproteins of the cell membranes and result into the release of the cell material. Osmotic shock. Microbial cells are relatively least affected by this osmotic shock. But these are usually used for the disruption of the cells where the protein is present in the periplasmic space. Alkali treatment is especially used for the extraction of the intracellular enzymes which are capable of tolerating high pH of say about 11 to 12 for say about 20 to 30 minutes. For the extraction of such enzymes, the cells are broken down by treating them with the alkali, and it will result into the release of the enzymes. One more is there, and it is considered as the gentle and sophisticated method, and that is the use of enzymes, where the lysozyme is the most popular enzyme used for the disruption of the cells. One more is autolysis, where the enzymes of the microbial cells themselves are used for the release of the cells. That is, this is especially used for the preparation of the yeast extract and the other products obtained from the yeast. So these are the different methods for the disruption of the cells. Now, once the cells are broken down and the product is released into the liquid, that is when the product has come out of the cells, the next stage comes in the DSP is the product concentration. Now here I would like to draw your attention that in some cases, some of the products, for example, the microbial enzymes, the product concentration will result into the required quality of the product, and in such products the further stages of the DSP are not required. But in other products where the further purification is required, there are different approaches as can be seen in the slide. Product concentration, it involves first the liquid extraction, that is here the separation of the product from the liquid mixture using the difference in solubility. That is, here the solvents are selected first where the products are preferentially soluble. So preferential solubility is considered over here, and the selection of the solvent is first carried out at laboratory level. Once selecting the solvent, that solvent may then be used at the large scale industrial scale during the DSP, where the product would be more soluble, preferentially soluble in the selected solvent which is used during the DSP. And as the operation proceeds, the solvent will become more and more enriched with the product. The volume of the broth or the liquid to be processed will go on decreasing, and finally will give rise to the concentration of the product. It will result into the availability of the liquid which is highly concentrated in the product. So liquid extraction is there. Here also it is associated, or it is linked with the precipitation and evaporation, where the excess of the liquid is evaporated, which will finally result into the availability of the product in the concentrated form. Then the next is the product purification, which is the final stage of the DSP. And as I said earlier, that concentration is enough for some of the microbial products where the further stages, purification stages, are not required. But in case of those products, especially those which are categorized as the high value, low volume products, which will include the bacterial vaccines, the recombinant products, that is the interferons, insulins, therapeutic proteins, antibodies, etc. So for these types of the products which are marketed at very high value and which are generally found to be present in very small amount, very small quantity, it requires the application of the sophisticated techniques. So as has been mentioned in the slide, the sophisticated techniques are used for the separation of these types of the high value products which are present in the broth or in the liquid in comparatively low quantity. As has been mentioned, the sophisticated techniques include varieties of the chromatographic techniques. We know that chromatographic techniques, they are very important. They play an important role in the product recovery, and varieties of the techniques are there, and they exploit different properties of the product, including the selective adsorption onto the columns, or it may be the ion exchange chromatography, which exploits the exchange of the free ions, or it may be the molecular weight, or it may be the affinity, biological affinity between the biological materials like enzyme and the substrate, or the antigen and antibody, and the more advanced chromatographic techniques like the HPLC, where the high pressure liquid chromatography, where using very high pressure, the separation of the product which is there in very small amount is achieved. So varieties of the techniques are there. We are not considering the details of the techniques, but at this stage you should be knowing that which are the different chromatographic techniques and what is their importance. So they are especially used in the separation recovery of these high value low volume products. Then it is also carried out using the membrane techniques, which are nothing but the sophisticated or the modern filtration techniques. Filtration, as I said earlier, that initially it is used for the separation of the solid and liquid. There the depth filters are used, whereas here when the membrane filtration, when this stage comes, the modern filters, that is it makes use of the absolute filters. You know that the absolute filters are those which are having the defined pore size, and here also the different techniques are there, like the ultrafiltration, microfiltration, and the reverse osmosis. These are the filtration techniques which makes use of the absolute filters and results into the separation of the very high value low volume products which are present there in the broth. Next one is the product formulation, which is almost the last or the final step, where the crystallization. Many microbial products are marketed in the crystalline form. For example, the citric acid, the organic acid, or the amino acids. So various types of the chemical agents are added at this stage, which will result into the crystallization of the compounds. The excess of the liquid is removed, it is evaporated, and the product is obtained in its highly purified crystalline form. So that is the crystallization, which involves the addition of salts, solvents, polymers, or it may also involve the alteration of pH, which will result into the crystallization of the compound. And the last step is the drying, where once again, depending upon the nature of the product, whether it is heat sensitive or heat labile, the different approaches are there. In case of the stable products, relatively stable product, the residual water is removed by exposing them to the drum dryers, where they come in direct contact with the heated surfaces of the drum and the water is removed. Or it may be the spray dryers are used in case of the delicate components, labile components. The other types of the dryers are used, pneumatic dryers. Even the lyophilization is one of the methods for drying the products, the microbial cells. So after drying comes the quality assurance, which is the very or I would say the most important aspect, because before the product is introduced into the market, it is very important to check the sterility of the product, and that is the job of the QC department of the company or of the project. They would check or they would assess the product, and different methods are there, standard protocols are there, as has been mentioned in the slide. The quality assurance is tested by different methods, like sterility testing is there, as you are already doing it in your laboratory pharmaceutical products, or it may be the bioassay, which is the only option available for the qualitative assessment of the antibiotics, or it may be the pyrogen testing, where the product is made safe, that is, it is free of the pyrogens. This is especially true for the injectables. So after quality, these we are not discussing in detail, because in the incoming series of the lecture, we are having one separate lecture where the quality assurance will be discussed in detail. But it is also, it is one of the parts of the DSP, that is why we have mentioned it over here. And the next or the final stage is the product formulation, where the packaging of the product is there, where depending upon the product, it is filled in different types of the containers. It may be the glass ampoules or the plastic containers. They are sealed and they are labeled properly. the labeling of the containers is very important, especially in case of the pharmaceutical products or the products which are to be used for the medical purpose, the date of manufacturing, the content, etc. So labeling is done, and then the product is ready for dispatch. That is, then it can be safely introduced into the market. So this, I have tried my best to give an overview of the DSP, how it is carried out in the ex situ mode of operation. The next and the equally important part is the effluent treatment, and will be covered by Bhairavi. So please.
Well, thank you, Sneha-Ben. It has been a very nice and lucrative discussion of downstream processes. She has given us the intricate details about the various stages that are involved in downstream processes. But you must have understood the fact that in carrying out all these downstream processes for obtaining the product in our desired form and quality and quantity, lots of waste is generated. And all this waste that is generated is either in the liquid form or in the solid form, and this waste cannot be just directly disposed of in the environment. This waste is considered to be an environmental hazard. It is responsible for creating pollution problems, and because it creates pollution problems, you just cannot dispose it directly into the environment. And therefore, the first thing that is done to the effluent is the polluting strength of the effluent is first measured, and for measuring the polluting strength we have to assess certain parameters in terms of BOD level, COD level, TDS. BOD is biochemical oxygen demand, chemical oxygen demand, total dissolved solids and suspended solids. These levels have to be first assessed. After that, if the levels are within the limits, then we can dispose that effluent without treatment. The consent limit for direct disposal of wastewater in a body of water is 20:30. That is 20 of BOD and 30 of total dissolved solids, 30 milligrams per liter and 20 milligrams per liter. If this is the limit, if you have assessed it according to that, then you can dispose it off into the environment. However, there are various disposal options available, and in these disposal options you can either, as I told you, you can either dispose the effluent directly into the environment, or you can, if the value is slightly higher than the consent limit, then you have to partially treat that wastewater before disposing it into the municipal sewerage system, not into the environment directly, but it should go to the municipal sewerage system. If the conditions are very high, then in-house treatment of the wastewater can be done, and for that, after that only you can dispose it into the municipal sewerage system. Now, the treatment options that are available, once the wastewater goes to the municipal sewerage system, after that the municipality deals with the treatment options, and the options that municipality has is at 3 levels. There are biological methods, there are chemical methods, and there are physical methods. The biological methods basically are certain aerobic and anaerobic processes. Chemical methods normally include coagulation, flocculation, precipitation and electrochemical processes whereby the COD limit is decreased, and physical methods include screening, sedimentation or incineration. Now, as mentioned earlier, there are various stages of effluent treatment. Effluent actually is the liquid waste that is generated. Now, that liquid waste which is generated in the industry is very highly polluted, and therefore it has to undergo 4 stages of treatment. In the primary stage, normally physical methods are employed. Now, these physical methods include initially screening of the entire effluent, liquid waste. In the screening, most of the large suspended solids are removed. After screening comes the use of grit chambers where small suspended particles are removed from the effluent. And then comes the stage of sedimentation where all the solid mass sediments. So basically in the primary treatment there is a separation of solid and liquid content. The solid that settles down is called primary sludge, and the liquid which is separated out, that liquid is called effluent, which then undergoes the secondary treatment. In the secondary stage of treatment, this is actually a biological process whereby we make use of aerobic and anaerobic processes to degrade the organic waste content that is present in the effluent. Now, for this biological treatment, we can make use of filtration, which you will be very much aware of the fact that there are trickling filters used where there are sand beds on which the effluent is trickled slowly, and it is allowed to trickle down the sand bay bed, and while it is trickling down the sand bed, microbial film develops on the surface of the sand bed, and this film is called zooglel film, and this microorganisms carry out degradation of the organic matter that is present in the liquid effluent. Besides the filtration process, even aeration is carried out, and aeration is done when aeration is used, what is basically done is that the oxygen content of the dissolved oxygen content of the effluent is increased so that the microbial flora can carry out oxidation of the liquid organic matter that is present in the liquid effluent, where the process is very commonly known as activated sludge process. There are also another biological process involved where oxidation ponds are used. This liquid effluent is taken to the ponds where that pond is exposed to air, and there will be development of algae on the surface of that pond liquid, and that algae will introduce oxygen into the liquid, and thereby whatever microbial flora is there in the effluent, that microbial flora will be able to degrade the organic matter and decrease the BOD level and COD level of the effluent. Now, after that, what happens at the end of this biological treatment, majority of the BOD and total suspended solids are removed, and it has been said that about the BOD is reduced to about 25 to 30 milligrams per liter, and 85% of total suspended solids are removed from the process. Now, but still, at the end of the secondary treatment, there are lots of suspended solids still there in form of very minute particles, and along with that there is also presence of nitrates and phosphates. This nitrate, that means the nitrogen and phosphorus content of this liquid effluent is about 50% of nitrogen and 70% of phosphorus, and this proves to be dangerous. It proves to be a chemical hazard to the environment, and therefore that also has to be removed. And for removal of nitrogen and phosphorus, the next stage is the advanced stage of treatment. In that advanced stage of treatment, nitrogen can be removed biologically by the nitrification and denitrification process, and phosphorus can be removed by addition of lime, alum or ferric chloride. So this is how all the nitrogen and phosphorus content is also removed. And then comes the final treatment. In the final treatment, disinfection of the liquid effluent is done, and by using either chlorine gas or ozone gas, and after that, after the disinfection process, whereby if any pathogens are present, they will be destroyed, and then finally you have to remove, you have to carry out a post aeration process, and at the end of that you decrease the BOD level of the liquid effluent. After treating the liquid mass of it, you have to the solid mass that has been collected. That solid mass, can I have the next slide please? That solid mass also has and it undergoes treatment, and the steps of treatment are thickening of that sludge, stabilization of the sludge, and dewatering of the sludge, whereby the volume of the sludge is decreased, it is stabilized in terms of its biological activity, and water content is decreased, at the end of which that solid mass is dried into cakes and finally incinerated. The disposal of that sludge can be done either by landfilling or by the process of incineration, or it can also be used as fertilizers or as soil conditioners. That is how the solid and liquid waste that is generated during the upstream process or the downstream process of fermentation industry, they have to be treated before they are disposed of into the environment. And now I would request Sneha Madam to please give the concluding remarks.
So we have reached to the concluding remarks where it has been mentioned already there in the slide there. The DSP is last but the most important segment of the process. We cannot possibly ignore the DSP while considering the USP. and the expenditure towards the DSP has to be compensated by the high yield so that the expected profit can be maintained, and there must be legitimate balance between the inputs and outputs in terms of the expenditure and in terms of the yields of the product that is obtained. And if these two they go together smoothly, then it will make the fermentation, the entire process, a grand success. So with these concluding remarks, we would like to express our thanks to the Commissionerate Higher Education Department, and we are also highly thankful to the staff of the studio for their kind cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.